I always thought I would know. That if my wife ever betrayed me, I would feel it before I saw it. That there would be something, some shift, some sign that would warn me before the truth hit. I told myself that no matter how well someone tried to hide their betrayal, it would leave cracks. And I was sure that I was the kind of man who would see them. But I didn't. There had been no signs. No distance. No hesitations. No late nights spent whispering on the phone or turning away when I walked into the room. If anything, things had been good between us. Stable. We laughed. We made plans. She kissed me every morning before leaving for work. She sent messages throughout the day. She curled up next to me at night. That's why, when the truth came, it wasn't something I had to piece together. It wasn't subtle. It hit me like a hammer, sudden and irreversible. It came in the form of a message. A video. A moment that split my life into before and after. It was late. The house was quiet, except for the faint hum of my laptop. I was finishing up work, clearing out emails. Anna was asleep in our bedroom, wrapped in the same blankets she had pulled over herself every night for years. She had come home at 2 a.m., kissed me, said she was exhausted, and crawled into bed. A completely normal night. Then my phone vibrated. I glanced at the screen. A message from David. That wasn't unusual. He was one of my closest friends, the kind of guy who texted at odd hours. But this message was different. I wasn't sure if I should send this, but you need to see it. There was a video file attached. I hesitated. Something about the wording made my stomach tighten. David wasn't the type to be vague. If he was hesitating, if he had to consider whether or not to send something, then whatever was in that video wasn't just bad. It was something that would change everything. I tapped the file. The video loaded. At first, it was just flashing lights and muffled music. A crowded nightclub. People dancing, bodies moving together. The camera was shaky, weaving through the chaos. Then, it focused, and I saw her. Anna. She was in the center of the frame, surrounded by women I recognized, her friends, the ones she had gone out with that night. She was laughing, moving with confidence, completely at ease in the club's atmosphere. She looked beautiful. She was wearing the dress she had asked me about before she left. I had told her she looked stunning. Now, I was watching that same dress pressed against another man. He appeared from the side, stepping in behind her like he belonged there. Tall. Broad-shouldered. Confident. Someone who knew how to handle himself around women. He didn't hesitate. He placed his hands on her waist. I waited for her to turn around. To brush him off. To step away, maybe even laugh at how bold he was. She didn't. Instead, she leaned back against him. She let him. Then she turned to face him. Her arms looped around his neck. Their faces inches apart. The way she looked at him, it wasn't discomfort. It wasn't hesitation. It was familiarity. Then, the video cut off. I stared at the screen. The last frame still burned in my mind. I didn't react. Not right away. My hands weren't shaking. My breathing hadn't changed. My body had no immediate reaction. It was like my mind had refused to process what I had just seen. A second message from David appeared. I didn't want to believe it either, man. That was it. No softening the blow. No trying to explain it away. Just the truth, stripped of anything that could make it easier to accept. I set my phone down. Then, I played the video again. Same result. Same reality. Anna. My wife. Wrapped around another man. The house around me hadn't changed. The walls were still the same. The furniture hadn't moved. But everything felt different. She was upstairs, sleeping in our bed. She had come home, kissed me, smiled, and gone to sleep as if nothing had happened. The betrayal wasn't just in what she had done, but in how easily she had done it. How seamlessly she had played the role of a loving wife, curling up next to me like she wasn't carrying another man's touch on her skin. But everything had changed. I opened my laptop. I needed to know everything. Anna had told me all about the bachelorette party. She had given me the timeline herself. Where they were going. Who was attending. How late they'd be out. There had been no reason to doubt her. She had been excited. Smiling as she got ready, talking about how it was Lisa's last night out before marriage. She had told me everything except this. I checked her social media first. Her Instagram had pictures from earlier in the night. Smiling at dinner. Toasting drinks with the girls. Perfectly curated, perfectly innocent. I kept searching. Lisa's profile had more. She had posted videos throughout the night. Anna laughing at the bar, the group dancing together, flashes of strobe lights. Then, I saw it. A story post from someone else in the group. A different angle of the same scene from David's video. Anna. Dancing with him. It wasn't just the way she moved, it was the way she reacted to his touch. The way she smiled. The way her body moved. The kind of comfort that doesn't happen in one night. My breathing slowed. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't some random guy getting lucky with a woman at a club. Anna had chosen this. I checked the timestamps. The videos had been taken around midnight. Anna had come home at 2 a.m. 2 hours unaccounted for. 2 hours after she had already crossed the line. I checked the rideshare apps. Anna hadn't driven that night. She had left in a car with the group. But she hadn't come home in one. I opened our shared location history. At 12:37 a.m., her location moved. Not home. Not to Lisa's. A hotel. It stayed there until 1:55 a.m. I closed the laptop. Anna had left the club with him. She had spent over an hour at a hotel. Then she had come home, kissed me, and climbed into our bed. I leaned back in my chair, inhaling slowly. I wouldn't wake her up. I wouldn't storm into the bedroom and demand answers. That was what an impulsive man would do. That was what someone without a plan would do. And I wasn't that man. Anna had made her move. Now, it was my turn. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't rage. I didn't wake Anna and demand answers. I didn't pace the house, breaking things in frustration. Instead, I sat at my desk, my laptop screen casting a cold glow over the room. My phone rested beside me, the video still accessible with a single tap. The world outside was still the same, silent, indifferent. The walls of my home stood unchanged. The furniture remained in place. But something was different. I knew. And now, I couldn't unknow it. I watched the video again. Not because I needed more proof, I had already accepted the truth, but because I needed to feel it. To let the betrayal settle into my bones. To strip away any lingering illusion that maybe, just maybe, I had misunderstood. I hadn't. Anna had danced with him. Let him touch her. Held onto him like he belonged there. There was no hesitation in the way she leaned into him, no reluctance when his hands traveled down her waist. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a moment of drunken carelessness. This was a choice. The real question wasn't what had happened. It was how far it had gone. I already had part of the answer. The missing 2 hours. From 12:37 a.m. to 1:55 a.m., Anna had been inside a hotel. She had told me she was at the club the whole time, that she had left with the girls, that nothing unusual had happened. She had lied to my face. I exhaled, forcing myself to stay calm. Anger wouldn't help me now. I needed more. More proof, more answers, not from her, but from what she had left behind. I unlocked my laptop and accessed our shared cloud storage. Anna and I had set it up years ago, mostly for convenience, vacation photos, important documents, the occasional grocery list. But it also meant her phone automatically backed up her pictures. If she had taken anything that night, it would be there. I scrolled through the recent uploads. Pictures from dinner, a few selfies, group shots with the girls. All normal. All before midnight. Then, I saw it. A mirror selfie. Taken at 1:20 a.m. The image loaded, and there she was standing in a dimly lit hotel bathroom, her makeup slightly smudged, her hair tousled. She wasn't posing. It was the kind of picture someone takes quickly, absently, without thinking. She had been alone in that bathroom. But she hadn't been alone in that room. The realization settled deep in my chest. This wasn't just some guy she met at the club. The way she had looked at him in the video, the way she had moved with him, it had history behind it. This had been planned. Not in a long-term affair kind of way. But in the way someone knows what they're doing before they do it. Anna had left the house intending to do this. The truth of it sat there in front of me, undeniable. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. She had already moved on from me. I checked her messages next. Our phones were linked. I had never cared before, there had never been a reason to check. But now, I had nothing to lose. Her texts from earlier in the night were normal. A few messages to Lisa. One to me around 10 p.m. Having fun. See you later. I kept scrolling. Then, I saw it. A gap. After 11:47 p.m., there were no messages. No outgoing texts. No calls. 2 full hours of silence. The moment she left the club, she stopped messaging anyone. She had disappeared. She hadn't even sent Lisa a message to say she was leaving. I checked her call log. Nothing. I checked her ride-share history. Nothing. The only movement in those missing hours was the one piece of evidence she hadn't erased, her location log. 12:37 a.m., hotel. 1:55 a.m., leaves hotel. 2:09 a.m., arrives home. She had left the club with him. She had spent over an hour in a hotel. And then she had come home, kissed me, crawled into bed next to me. She had kissed me. I closed my eyes for a long moment, listening to the silence of the house. She was upstairs now, still sleeping. Still wrapped in our blankets, in our bed. The same woman who had walked into a hotel room with another man just hours ago. I opened my eyes. I wouldn't wake her up. I wouldn't demand answers. I wouldn't give her the chance to lie again. I had the truth. Now, I just needed a plan. The investigation continues. I checked the video again, pausing on the man's face. Who was he? I hadn't recognized him, but that didn't mean he was a stranger. I needed a name. I went back to Lisa's social media. The bachelorette party had been well documented. Plenty of videos, photos, tags. I scrolled through the attendees. Most were familiar Anna's close friends, a few acquaintances. But then, in one of the group photos, I noticed him. Standing in the background, slightly off to the side. I clicked on the profile. Eric Carter. A mutual friend of Lisa's fiancé. His profile was public. I skimmed through it, looking for anything that stood out. He wasn't married. No girlfriend. No relationship posts. He had been at the club that night. And based on the video, based on the way Anna moved with him, this wasn't the first time they had met. I checked his older posts. Then I saw something that made my jaw tighten. A picture from 2 months ago. A casual group outing. Lisa, her fiancé, some of their friends. And Anna. Sitting right next to Eric. Leaning toward him. Smiling. I checked the date. That same night, Anna had told me she was out with Lisa. She had never mentioned Eric. I clicked on another post. A comment under one of his pictures. Anna had liked it. A simple interaction, something meaningless on its own. But now, looking at it in hindsight, it wasn't meaningless at all. Anna had known Eric before that night at the club. This wasn't random. This wasn't one mistake. This had been building for months. I leaned back in my chair, letting the weight of it sink in. Anna wasn't just some wife who made a mistake at a bachelorette party. She was someone who had met a man, entertained the idea, let it grow. And then, she had acted on it. And now, she was sleeping upstairs like nothing had happened. But something had happened. And I wasn't going to let it slide. I didn't storm into the bedroom, shaking her until she admitted what she had done. That would have been easy. Too easy. Confronting her in a moment of rage would give her control to lie, to manipulate, to turn this into something smaller than it was. I wouldn't give her that chance. Instead, I sat in the dim light of my office, my laptop screen still open, the evidence staring back at me. Anna's picture, taken in a hotel bathroom at 1:20 a.m. The last location ping at 1:55 a.m., confirming she had left the hotel shortly before coming home. The ride history, missing for those crucial hours. The video, still there, still undeniable. And now, Eric. I had his name. I had his face. And after scrolling through months of social media posts, I had proof that this wasn't just some drunken mistake. Anna had known him. Talked to him. Liked his posts. Sat next to him at gatherings she never even told me about. This had been building for months. And I had let it happen, completely blind. I exhaled slowly, my fingers tightening into a fist. No. I wasn't going to let emotion cloud my judgment. I had spent the night collecting evidence, not just for myself, but for what came next. Because when I finally confronted her, there wouldn't be arguments. There wouldn't be denials. There would only be the truth. The first hints of dawn crept through the blinds, pale light stretching across the floor. 6 a.m. Anna was still asleep. It was time. I stood up, stretched my arms, and took a deep breath. The calm that settled over me wasn't forced, it was deliberate. This wasn't about revenge. Not yet. This was about exposing the lie. I walked down the hallway, my footsteps steady. The bedroom door was slightly open, the air inside still heavy with the warmth of sleep. Anna was curled under the blankets, her dark hair spilling over the pillow, breathing softly, peacefully. The same woman who had walked into a hotel room with another man just hours ago. I pulled out my phone, scrolled to the video, and pressed play. The club music filled the room instantly, loud, unmistakable. The bass vibrated through the silence, shattering the morning stillness. Anna stirred. Her breathing changed. Then, she sat up, her face twisted in sleepy confusion. Her voice was groggy. Then, her eyes flickered to the screen. She froze. For a long moment, the only sound in the room was the music from the video. Then, her face changed. Not shock. Not horror. Calculation. She was already thinking. Thinking of what to say, how to twist this, how to control the damage. I didn't let her. I tossed my phone onto the bed. Say nothing. Anna's mouth opened, then closed. Her hands gripped the blanket, her breathing shallow. I could see it, the way her mind was scrambling for the right words. And then, she chose her angle. I was drunk, she whispered. I didn't even. No, my voice was calm, but final. We're past that. Keep lying, and this will get worse for you. She flinched. That reaction was real. Fear. Not of me, but of losing control. I grabbed my laptop from the dresser, opened it, and turned the screen toward her. The hotel selfie stared back at her, timestamped 1:20 a.m. Her entire body went still. I spoke before she could. You weren't drunk when you took that. You were sober enough to check yourself in the mirror before going back to him. Anna's lips parted, her pupils dilated. I leaned forward, voice dropping lower. You left the club at 12:37 a.m. You spent nearly 2 hours in a hotel room with him. I know who he is. I know how long you've known him. And I know this wasn't a one-time mistake. Her lower lip trembled. Her fingers curled tighter into the blanket, knuckles white. She knew she was caught. But she wasn't going to give up that easily. Tears welled in her eyes. It didn't mean anything. I let out a breath. You really think that's the issue? That if you tell me it was meaningless, I'll suddenly feel better about it? She shook her head quickly. I don't know why I did it. Her voice cracked. I love you, I swear I do. It was just. I cut her off. Stop. She swallowed hard. Silence stretched between us. She didn't speak again, and I didn't press her. I wanted her to sit in it. In the weight of what she had done. Finally, after what felt like a full minute, she whispered, "Are you going to leave me?" I studied her face. Even now, she wasn't begging. She wasn't throwing herself at my feet, apologizing, pleading. She was calculating. I had already made my decision. But she didn't need to know that. Not yet. I picked up my phone, turned off the video, and walked toward the door. Get up. Anna blinked. What? I didn't look back. Get up. Take a shower. Get dressed. You and I are going to talk. And I suggest you think very carefully about what you say next. Then, I walked out. The breakdown of a marriage. Anna took 30 minutes before she finally emerged from the bedroom. She had changed into jeans and a loose sweater, her wet hair pulled back into a bun. Her eyes were still red, her face pale. She sat across from me at the dining table. I didn't speak first. She fidgeted with her hands, staring down at the wood grain. Then, finally, she whispered, "I don't want to lose you." I watched her carefully. Her voice was genuine. But the words weren't. She still wasn't admitting to anything. She wasn't saying she was sorry. She wasn't confessing. I leaned back in my chair. Tell me the truth. She hesitated. I tapped my phone against the table. Anna. Her shoulders slumped. It wasn't planned, she mumbled. I let that sit between us. She exhaled shakily. I don't know why it happened. I got caught up in the moment. I wasn't thinking. I tilted my head. You weren't thinking when you checked into a hotel? Her face burned with shame. No. I waited. Finally, her voice cracked. It only happened once. Lie. I had already seen the pictures from 2 months ago. The subtle glances. The body language. But I didn't call her out on it. Not yet. I let her sit in her own lie. Anna swallowed hard. I'll do anything to fix this. I stayed quiet for a long time. Then, I smiled. And for the first time since this started, she looked afraid. Anna sat across from me, her hands folded together so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Her damp hair clung to her forehead, the sweater she had thrown on slightly wrinkled, as if she had put it on in a hurry. Her eyes, once familiar, rimmed with the kind of exhaustion that comes from realizing you've lost control of the situation. She had been crying, but not for the reasons she wanted me to believe. Not because she regretted what she had done. Not because she had hurt me. She was crying because she got caught. She had slept with another man, lied about it, walked into my home, into our bed, kissed me, and assumed it would never come back to haunt her. Now, she was trapped. She still didn't understand what was coming. I leaned back in my chair, my fingers tapping against the wooden table, watching her as she struggled to compose herself. The silence between us stretched, thick and suffocating. Her lips parted, but I spoke first. I need to hear you say it. Her face twitched. Say what? The truth. Her breathing hitched. She hesitated, licking her lips as if the words physically hurt to form. It was a mistake, she whispered. Wrong answer. A mistake is dropping a glass. Forgetting a meeting. Sending a text to the wrong person. A mistake isn't sneaking away to a hotel with another man, spending nearly 2 hours in his bed, then coming home to your husband like nothing happened. I didn't react. She swallowed hard. I wasn't thinking, she added quickly. I drank too much. I got caught up in the moment. I didn't mean for it to happen. You didn't mean to go to a hotel? My voice was quiet, steady. She flinched, her fingers twisting together. She was desperate now. Trying to shape the story in a way that minimized the damage, that let me believe she hadn't actually made a choice. But I had spent the entire night gathering evidence. I knew about Eric. I knew they had met months ago. I knew she had spent time with him before, even if she had never admitted it. I knew this wasn't some random, impulsive moment of bad judgment. This was premeditated. Anna, I said, and her body tensed at the way I said her name. You had a ride home with Lisa. You told me that's how you left the club. That was a lie. She squeezed her eyes shut. I continued. You left at 12:37 a.m. You went to a hotel with him. You stayed until 1:55 a.m. You had 2 full hours to think about what you were doing. And now you want me to believe it was just a mistake? Her shoulders trembled. She knew she had nowhere to go. I wasn't giving her an opening to spin it in her favor. I wasn't giving her anything. Then, she changed tactics. Her face crumpled. The tears came back, this time heavier, more deliberate. I don't want to lose you. Her voice cracked. I swear, I love you. I don't know why I did this. I wasn't thinking. But it didn't mean anything. I'll do anything to fix this. There it was. The last desperate grasp for control. The shift from excuses to damage control. She still thought she could salvage this. I exhaled slowly, letting the weight of her words hang in the air. Then, I leaned forward slightly, just enough that she had no choice but to meet my eyes. I don't care what you want, I said. She blinked, as if the words physically struck her. I stood up. She stiffened. Where are you going? I grabbed my phone, slipping it into my pocket. I have things to do. Wait, she reached out like she wanted to grab my hand, but I stepped back before she could. Please. Just let's talk about this. We already talked. She stared at me, her expression raw with confusion and fear. Because this wasn't how she expected this to go. She thought I would argue. She thought I would beg for answers. She thought I would fight for her. But I wasn't angry. I wasn't even emotional anymore. I was done. And that terrified her more than anything else. I turned and walked out, leaving her alone at the table. The first steps toward revenge. I didn't leave the house immediately. Instead, I went back to my office and shut the door, pressing my back against it for a moment as I exhaled. The confrontation had gone exactly how I expected. She had done everything I predicted: denial, excuses, emotional manipulation. And it wasn't enough. She had lost. She just didn't know it yet. I sat down at my desk, opening my laptop again. Now, it was time to take everything from her. I had no interest in revenge that involved screaming or dramatic outbursts. That wasn't how you truly punished someone. Revenge wasn't about anger. It was about consequences. Anna had made a choice. And now, she was going to lose everything she had built. Step 1, the truth will spread. I opened my email and drafted a message. It wasn't filled with emotion. It wasn't some dramatic rant. It was simple, professional, and direct. I attached the evidence, the video, the location logs, the hotel selfie. Then, I sent it to Lisa. And every single one of Anna's friends. I wasn't going to let her spin a fake story. By the time they woke up, they would know exactly what she had done. Step 2. The man who helped destroy my marriage. Eric. The man she had slept with. He had walked into my life without knowing who I was, and now, he was going to understand what it meant to cross the wrong person. I searched for his workplace. His LinkedIn was public. He worked for a marketing firm, and his company prided itself on professionalism and integrity. I drafted another email. I made it factual, simple. No insults. No threats. Just the evidence. The timestamped video. The proof that he had knowingly slept with a married woman. Then, I sent it to his boss. Let him explain that to his employer, to the people who trusted him. By the end of the day, he wouldn't just be the guy who had a fun night with another man's wife. He would be the man who lost everything over it. Step 3. Taking back my life. Anna was still in the kitchen when I finally walked out of my office. She looked up, her expression unreadable. She opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. I sent the proof to Lisa. To everyone in your friend group. They all know. Her face drained of color. I continued. And Eric's boss knows what kind of man he is. He won't have a job by the end of the week. Her breath hitched. You. I didn't let her finish. And by tomorrow, you'll be served divorce papers. For the first time, she broke. Tears poured down her face. Her entire body shook. I watched, expression unreadable. I didn't feel sorry for her. She had made her choices. Now, she was going to live with them. Anna sat frozen, her breath coming in sharp, uneven gasps. The weight of my words had settled over her like a crushing force, but she still wasn't speaking. Not yet. She was processing, trying to figure out whether there was still a way out of this. I could see the thoughts running through her head. How bad is this? Can I fix it? Who will take my side? She didn't fully understand what I had done yet. But she would. I leaned against the kitchen counter, watching her closely. You sent it? Her voice was barely above a whisper. I did. Her face twisted. To everyone? To Lisa. To your friends. They all know. And Eric's boss, I continued. By now, he's probably trying to explain to his employer why they should keep a man who sleeps with married women. Her fingers dug into the table. You're trying to ruin my life. I tilted my head. No, Anna. You ruined your own life. I'm just making sure you don't get to hide from it. Tears welled in her eyes. Her shoulders trembled, her hands shaking so badly she had to press them against her lap to steady them. For the first time since this started, she looked truly afraid. Not of me. Of losing everything. She pushed back her chair suddenly, standing up. Her breathing was ragged now, shallow. I need to, she stopped herself, shaking her head. I need to talk to Lisa. I gave a short nod. Go ahead. See how that conversation goes. Her lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to argue, but she had nothing to say. She turned and ran down the hallway toward the bedroom. I heard the door slam shut, followed by frantic shuffling, her grabbing her phone. Then, silence. I exhaled, feeling a calm sense of satisfaction settle into my chest. It had begun. Anna had spent years building a reputation. She wasn't just anyone in her social circle, she was seen as the responsible one, the good wife. The one who had the perfect relationship, the woman her friends looked up to when they talked about settling down. She had spent years cultivating that image. And in one morning, I had shattered it. I could imagine how the conversation was going. Lisa, waking up to my email, opening the file, seeing the truth with her own eyes. The video. The hotel selfie. The location logs. There was no room for excuses. No twisting the narrative. No claiming it had been a misunderstanding. Anna had lied to all of them. And now, they knew. I pulled out my phone and refreshed my messages. Unsurprisingly, Lisa had already responded. Lisa, I had no idea. I'm so sorry. I can't believe she did this. Lisa, we were all talking in the group chat. Everyone's seen it. Lisa, she's trying to do damage control, but no one's buying it. I smirked slightly. Of course she was. Anna wasn't the type to accept consequences. She was trying to salvage what she could. I refreshed again. A new message popped up. Lisa, she just left the group chat. I let out a slow breath. It was happening even faster than I thought. She was already being cut off. There was still one more thing to check. I opened my email and scrolled down to the message I had sent to Eric's employer. There had been no response yet, but I didn't expect one, not immediately. Companies don't make snap decisions about things like this. But they do talk. And Eric was now a liability. I searched for his social media next. His profiles had been public before. Now. Locked. Interesting. Then, I checked his company's website. His name was still listed, but that wouldn't last long. Not when his reputation was destroyed. I clicked back to my messages. And there it was. An unread text from Eric. I opened it. Eric, you're a pathetic. Eric, whatever issues you have with your wife, take them up with her. Coming after my job? You crossed the line. Eric, if you don't back off, I promise you'll regret it. I stared at the screen, feeling nothing. How predictable. Eric wasn't actually angry about what happened. He wasn't ashamed. He was just pissed that I had taken something from him. I typed back a single response. Me, you should focus on finding a new job. Let me know if you need references. I hit send. The message delivered. Then, a few seconds later, read. No response. I smirked. Coward. By now, Anna had locked herself in the bedroom for over an hour. I didn't check on her. I didn't care what she was doing. But I knew exactly what was going through her mind. She had lost control of the situation. She had assumed she could contain the damage, convince Lisa that it was all a misunderstanding, sway her friends, twist the narrative. But she couldn't. Because I had moved too quickly. I had made sure that everyone knew the truth before she even had a chance to lie. I took a sip of coffee, feeling the warmth spread through my chest. This was what real revenge looked like. Not screaming. Not breaking things. Not emotional outbursts. Just a quiet, calculated unraveling of everything she once took for granted. And the best part? I wasn't even done yet. Another hour passed before Anna finally emerged. She looked like hell. Her eyes were swollen, her face blotchy from crying. She was gripping her phone so tightly that her knuckles had turned white. I didn't react. I just sat there, waiting. She took a shaky breath. Please. I raised an eyebrow. Please what? Her lower lip trembled. Don't do this. I can't fix this if you won't talk to me. I tilted my head slightly. Fix it? She swallowed. I'll do anything. I exhaled, shaking my head. You still don't get it. She blinked rapidly. Get what? I stood up. This isn't about fixing anything. Her breath hitched. I walked past her, heading toward the front door. You have 1 hour to pack your things, I said coldly. I don't want you here when I get back. Her hands clenched. This is my house too. Not anymore. The words cut through the air. And finally, for the first time, she understood. This wasn't an argument she could win. This wasn't something she could talk her way out of. This was the end. I opened the door. 1 hour, Anna. Then, I walked out, leaving her standing there, shaking, as her world collapsed around her. Anna stood in the middle of the bedroom, motionless, as if time had frozen around her. Her suitcase lay open on the bed, untouched. Clothes spilled out of the dresser drawer she had yanked open in frustration, but she wasn't packing. She wasn't even trying. She was just standing there, staring at nothing. She had 30 minutes left. The clock on the wall ticked softly, each second bringing her closer to the moment when she would have to walk out of this house, our house, for good. Her phone lay on the bed beside the open suitcase, its screen lighting up again and again with unanswered calls. But none of them were from her friends. None of them were from her family. Because they weren't answering her. She had called Lisa twice. No answer. She had called her mother once. Straight to voicemail. She had tried her father. He declined the call. Even Emily, her closest co-worker, hadn't picked up. Anna had spent years cultivating relationships, surrounding herself with people who saw her as dependable, loyal, trustworthy. But trust, once broken, is nearly impossible to regain. And now, they all knew. The reality of what she had done wasn't just hers to bear anymore. Everyone who had once believed in her had turned their backs on her. Her hands curled into fists as she blinked rapidly, breathing hard. It wasn't supposed to go like this. I wasn't supposed to find out. I wasn't supposed to win. But I had. And now, she had nothing. She slowly reached for her phone and opened her contacts. There was only one name left she hadn't tried. Eric. Her finger hovered over the call button. Her last hope. The only person left. She exhaled shakily, pressed the button, and lifted the phone to her ear. It rang. Once. Twice. Then. Call declined. She stared at the screen, her breath catching in her throat. The rejection hit her harder than she expected. She tried again. Blocked. The truth settled deep in her chest, cold and suffocating. Even him. Even the man she destroyed her marriage for didn't want anything to do with her now. Anna squeezed her eyes shut, shaking her head. No. No, no, no. This wasn't happening. She wasn't supposed to be alone. She wasn't supposed to be cast out like this. The walls of the bedroom seemed to close in on her, the house she had once shared with me now a prison she had no choice but to leave. Her legs felt weak beneath her as she sat down on the edge of the bed, her fingers gripping the sheets. This wasn't real. This was a nightmare. A nightmare she had created with her own hands. Downstairs, I sat at the kitchen table, watching the last few minutes of her time in my life slowly tick away. I knew she wasn't packing. I knew she wasn't ready to leave. But ready or not, she had to. The front door was open just a crack, letting in the cool evening air. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that didn't belong in a home that had once been filled with conversations, with laughter, with the illusion of love. My phone buzzed on the table. Anna. I let it ring. She tried again. And again. Finally, on the fourth attempt, I answered. I didn't say anything. The silence between us stretched, thick and heavy. Then, her voice came through, small and desperate. Please. I stayed quiet. I have nowhere to go. She wasn't lying. But I didn't care. She took a shuddering breath. You don't have to do this. Still, I said nothing. A shaky laugh escaped her, but there was no humor in it. Just raw, broken disbelief. I can't believe this is happening. Her voice cracked. I thought we. No, I cut in, my voice calm. You don't get to say that. She swallowed hard. I didn't mean for this to happen. You keep saying that, I said flatly. Like it changes what you did. I messed up, she stammered. But I never stopped loving you. I swear I didn't. I let out a slow breath, rubbing a hand over my jaw. If she had said this a day ago, maybe it would have meant something. But not now. Not when I knew how easily she had thrown me away. Not when I had seen the proof of what she had done, how she had touched another man, how she had betrayed me without hesitation. And then, she had kissed me afterward. The silence on my end must have made her panic because her words came faster, more frantic. "I'll do anything to fix this." I closed my eyes for a moment. She still thought this was something she could fix. She still thought I was the man who would forgive her. She was wrong. I exhaled. "Your time's up, Anna." Her breath hitched. I heard the rustling of sheets, the sharp inhale of breath like she was struggling to hold back a sob. "You're really doing this," she whispered. I already did. I hung up. And just like that, it was over. 10 minutes later, I heard soft footsteps on the stairs. She didn't run this time. She walked slowly, each step heavy, like her body was finally understanding what her mind had refused to accept. She stopped in the doorway of the kitchen, her face pale, her arms wrapped around herself. Her suitcase was behind her, packed but untouched, as if it had dragged her down with the weight of everything she had lost. Her lips trembled as she met my eyes. "Please." The word barely left her mouth before her voice broke. It was the most honest she had sounded in months. But it didn't matter. Not anymore. She took a step forward, her eyes searching mine. "Is this really the end?" I nodded once. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she didn't wipe them away. She wasn't fighting anymore. She was just breaking. I stood up, walking past her to the front door. I pulled it open, stepping aside. She looked at me one last time, her breath shuddering as she tried to memorize my face. I didn't look away. She took one last, deep breath, then grabbed the suitcase and stepped out onto the porch. The night air wrapped around her, cold and unforgiving. She hesitated at the bottom step, like she was waiting for me to change my mind. But I didn't. I simply stood there, watching as she walked down the sidewalk, her steps unsteady, her figure slowly disappearing into the darkness. She didn't turn back. And then, she was gone. I shut the door behind her. For the first time in years, the house finally felt like mine again. And for the first time in months, I took a deep breath. And I felt free. The house was silent. Not the kind of silence that felt peaceful. Not the kind that wrapped around you like a blanket after a long day. This was the kind of silence that came after destruction. The kind that settled in the spaces where something used to exist. Anna leave. Her presence had been erased from the house in the span of an hour, but the weight of what had happened still lingered in the air, thick and suffocating. I stood in the doorway for a long moment, staring at the empty space where she had stood just minutes ago. The door was closed now, locked. The porch light flickered slightly, casting a dim glow over the sidewalk where she had walked away. I didn't watch where she went. I didn't care. She had made her choices. And now, she had to live with them. I turned away, stepping back into the house, the wooden floor creaking under my weight. The living room was exactly how I had left it, untouched, still. A glass of water sat on the coffee table, half-finished, condensation forming a ring around the base. I hadn't realized how tired I was until now. Not just physically. But in a way that felt deeper, like I had been carrying something heavy for months, and only now did I understand how much weight it had put on me. I sank onto the couch, resting my elbows on my knees, pressing my palms together. It was over. So why didn't I feel anything? I picked up my phone, scrolling through the messages I had ignored while Anna was still here. There were a few from Lisa, some from mutual friends. All variations of the same thing. Lisa, did she leave? Emily, I can't believe she actually did this. How are you holding up? Mark, you need anything? I know this has to be a lot. I set the phone down without responding. I didn't have the energy to explain how I felt when I didn't even know the answer myself. The logical part of my brain told me I had done everything right. I had gathered evidence. I had made sure she had no way to lie or manipulate her way out of it. I had made her face the consequences. But emotions don't work like logic. You don't just flip a switch and erase years of love, of memories, of shared moments. Even when you know it was all a lie. I leaned back against the couch, staring at the ceiling. The worst part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the realization that I had never truly known her at all. My phone buzzed again, pulling me from my thoughts. Anna. I inhaled slowly, debating whether I should ignore it. But something in me wanted to hear it, to listen to her try, one last time, to justify what she had done. I swiped to answer. Silence. Then, a soft, shaky breath. I don't know where to go. Her voice was small, weaker than I'd ever heard it before. I didn't respond. She swallowed hard. No one's answering me. Still, I said nothing. A bitter laugh escaped her. You really don't care, do you? I closed my eyes for a moment. You made your choice, Anna. I was drunk, she whispered. I wasn't thinking. I opened my eyes, shaking my head. That's not an excuse. Her breath hitched. I didn't mean to hurt you. I let out a slow exhale, rubbing my temple. You chose to lie to me. You chose to walk into a hotel with him. You chose to come home like nothing happened. She didn't argue. Because she couldn't. Instead, she did what she had always done, she tried to manipulate. I still love you, she whispered. I almost laughed. Love? That wasn't love. Love isn't betrayal. Love isn't dishonesty. Love isn't walking into another man's bed and then coming home to your husband like nothing happened. And I wasn't the fool she thought I was. I finally spoke. You're not my problem anymore, Anna. Her breath shook. I heard the sound of her trying to hold back tears, the way her voice trembled when she said, I don't know what to do. And for the first time since this started, I felt nothing for her. No anger. No sadness. Just emptiness. You figure it out, I said. Then I hung up. And just like that, I was free. I stared at the phone for a long moment after the call ended. Then, I placed it face down on the table and leaned back, closing my eyes. The weight on my chest? Gone. The constant doubt, the nagging suspicion that something was wrong, the sinking feeling that I had been ignoring for months? Gone. I wasn't broken. I wasn't lost. I was just done. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. I wasn't playing the role of a husband who had to wonder where his wife was when she wasn't home. I wasn't sitting in bed at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if she was lying to me. I was free. Completely, fully free. I let out a slow breath, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow, I'd wake up in my house, not ours. Tomorrow, I'd start rebuilding my life, not the one I thought we shared. Tomorrow, I'd start over. And the best part? She wouldn't be in it. The morning after Anna left felt different from any morning I had woken up to in years. The silence that filled the house was no longer suffocating. It was no longer the silence of uncertainty or the silence of betrayal lurking beneath the surface. It was the silence of freedom. For the first time in a long time, I didn't wake up feeling like I had to search for signs, didn't have to analyze every little action, every delayed response, every late-night outing. There was no longer a need to question, to doubt, to prepare for the moment when everything would come crashing down. It had already happened. The destruction was complete, and I had walked away from it intact. I stepped out of bed without hesitation, without that nagging heaviness in my chest. The house felt emptier, but not in a way that made me feel lonely. It was emptier because it was mine now. Every inch of it belonged to me, without any lingering shadows of a marriage that had already been over long before I had discovered the truth. The sheets were crisp, undisturbed. No scent of her perfume lingered in the air. No faint traces of her presence remained. The bathroom counter was no longer cluttered with her skincare products, the closet no longer held clothes that weren't mine. It felt as if she had been erased from this space in a way that was almost unnatural. As if she had never belonged here at all. I moved through the house at my own pace, taking in the details I had overlooked before. The framed photos were gone, the ones she had taken with her when she left. The bookshelf, once filled with things we had chosen together, was half empty, leaving behind only the books I had picked out for myself. The kitchen felt lighter, no longer filled with the tension of forced conversations over breakfast. Sitting at the table, drinking my coffee, I found myself reflecting not on what had happened, but on what came next. There was nothing left to uncover, no more truths to chase down. The betrayal had already unfolded in its entirety, and I had already faced it. There was no lingering need for closure, no desire to go back and demand more answers that wouldn't change anything. She had made her choices. I had made mine. And now, life moved forward, with or without her. I picked up my phone, scrolling through messages that had piled up overnight. Friends checking in, making sure I was okay. A few offering to meet up, to talk, to distract me from the weight of the past few days. I appreciated the concern, but I didn't feel the need to respond right away. There was no urgency, no desperation to fill the void that Anna had left behind. Because there was no void. The relationship had ended long before I had realized it. She had checked out of our marriage the moment she had stepped into that hotel room, maybe even before that. The moment I had discovered the truth, I had already started to detach, already started the process of letting go. There was no grief. Only acceptance. I finished my coffee, standing up and stretching. Today was just another day. The first of many where I didn't have to answer to someone who had already discarded me long ago. The first of many where I would wake up without feeling like something was missing. Because nothing was missing anymore. The weight was gone. The past was over. And I was finally free. The realization that I had spent the last few years of my life in stagnation hit me harder than I expected. My relationship with Anna had consumed me in ways I hadn't even noticed. I had stopped prioritizing myself. I had given so much of my time and energy to a marriage that, in the end, was nothing more than an illusion. Now that it was gone, I could see how much of myself I had lost along the way. That was about to change. I made a list that same morning. Not a list of things to forget, but a list of things to improve. The first thing on that list? My body. I had spent years neglecting my health, pushing it aside under the excuse of being too busy. I had let stress dictate my habits, let late nights and skipped workouts become the norm. Not anymore. I found my old running shoes, the ones that had been buried in the closet under years of dust. They still fit. I laced them up and stepped outside, letting the crisp morning air fill my lungs. The first run was hard. Every muscle protested, every breath felt heavier than it should have. But with every step, I felt lighter. I wasn't running from anything anymore. I was running towards something. The next thing on my list was my mind. I had spent too long in the comfort of routine, in the safety of the familiar. I had let the world outside my marriage become something distant, something I only interacted with when necessary. That, too, had to change. I walked into a bookstore later that afternoon, the first time in years I had stepped into one without Anna. Before, we had always chosen books together, ones that interested her, ones that fit neatly into her version of who we were. This time, I wandered alone. I picked books I had always meant to read but never did. Books on business, on psychology, on philosophy. Books that would challenge me, push me, force me to think in ways I hadn't before. I wanted to learn again. Not just about the world, but about myself. One of the biggest realizations that hit me after Anna left was how isolated I had become. Not because I didn't have friends. But because I had let my life revolve around my marriage, let my world shrink down to just her. I hadn't noticed how much I had drifted from people who had once been close to me. I hadn't noticed how many invitations I had ignored, how many conversations I had let die out, all because I had convinced myself that my relationship was enough. But it wasn't. And it never had been. I reached out to old friends that week, people I hadn't spoken to in far too long. Not because I needed them to comfort me, but because I needed to rebuild the connections I had lost. I said yes to plans I would have turned down before. I reconnected with the people who had always been there, waiting for me to remember who I was before I lost myself in a marriage that had never truly existed. And with every conversation, every moment spent laughing over catching up over dinner, I realized something. I wasn't alone. I had never been alone. I had just forgotten how to see the people who had always been there. By the end of the first week, I felt different. Not healed. Not whole. Not yet. But better. For the first time in years, I wasn't living in reaction to someone else's choices. I wasn't trying to fix something broken, wasn't trying to hold together a life that had already been slipping through my fingers. I was building something new. For myself. By myself. The last thing I did that week was change the locks. Not because I was afraid Anna would come back, but because I needed a fresh start. She was a part of my past now. And I had no interest in letting the past back in. When I closed the door that night, standing in the quiet of my home, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Tomorrow was a new day. And for the first time in years, I was looking forward to it.